Welcome to Lesson 29, Linux Basics, the operating system that quietly runs almost everything around you. Here's the paradox. Linux only powers about 3% of desktops, but it runs 95% of the internet, 100% of supercomputers, every Android phone, and most of the cloud. As a Help Desk Pro, you'll meet it through SSH into a server, a Raspberry Pi, or a Docker container. So, over the next 4 pieces, we'll cover distros, package managers, systemed, and the shell, so you can land in any Linux box without panic. So, let's start with distros. Linux itself is just the kernel Linus Torvald wrote back in 1991. A distro is what wraps that kernel into something usable. GNU tools, a package manager, a desktop, and someone curating it all. There are over 600 of them, but really only 3 families matter. Debian and its children, Ubuntu, Mint, use apt. Red Hat, Fedora, and Rocky use DNF. Arch and Manjaro use Pacman. Learn one, and you can navigate every cousin in that family. For help desk work, start with Ubuntu on the desktop and expect Rocky or RHEL on the servers you SSH into. Now, those 3 families each have their own way of installing software. And this is where Linux actually shines over Windows. You don't hunt down installers on sketchy websites. Software comes from curated repositories, signed and dependency resolved. On Debian and Ubuntu, it's sudo apt install Firefox. On Fedora or Rocky, swap in DNF. On Arch, Pacman S with single-letter flags. Same idea, different syntax. And when something isn't in your distro's repo, snap, flatpak, or appamage fill the gap cross-distro. Step back and look at the family tree. It all starts with one kernel, Linus Torvalds, 1991. And from that single root, 3 major branches grew: Debian in 93, Red Hat in 95, and Arch in 2002. Under Debian, you'll meet Ubuntu, Mint, and Kali. Under Red Hat, RHEL, Fedora, and Rocky. Under Arch, the pure Arch itself, plus friendlier forks like Manjaro and EndeavorOS. Learn where a distro sits on this tree, and you can predict how it behaves before you even log in. Now, once you're logged in, the first thing running on almost any modern Linux box is systemed. Process ID 1, the parent of everything. You control it with 2 commands worth burning into memory: systemctl to start, stop, enable, or check services, and journalstl to read the logs when something breaks. The beauty is the syntax is identical on Ubuntu, RHEL, Fedora, or Arch. Learn it once. Use it on every server you'll ever touch. Once systemed has things running, you'll need to navigate the file system itself, and here's the gift Linux gives you: the file system hierarchy standard. Etc. holds configs, home holds users, var holds logs and data, ozsar is installed software. Identical on Ubuntu, RHEL, Arch. Memorize these paths once and you'll never feel lost on a strange server. Pair that with bash and about 15 commands: ls, cd, grep, find, ps, top, tail, and you've covered 90% of real help desk Linux work. Now let's put it all together with 4 tickets you'll actually see. Web server down, SSH in, systemctl status nginx, check journalctl for the error, restart, server slow, top to spot the runaway, df, h for disk, free, h for memory pressure. Install Docker, 4 command sequence: apt update, apt install, systemctl enable, user mod. Patch a fleet, test on staging, apt upgrade or DNF upgrade, reboot if the kernel changed. Same patterns, every distro. Before we wrap, lock in this vocabulary: 12 terms that show up in every Linux ticket and forum answer you'll ever read. Kernel, distro, GNU, explain what Linux actually is. FHS, systemed, systemctl, journalctl are how you navigate and control a running box. apt and DNF cover the 2 package manager families, and sudo, ssh, chmod. Those 3 you'll type every single day. Know these, and you can read any Linux conversation without flinching. Now, let's clear the air on 5 myths that scare people away from Linux. No, it's not just for hackers. Modern Ubuntu or Mint is as easy as Windows. No, distros aren't interchangeable. Package manager and philosophy differ. Free doesn't mean low quality when Red Hat, Google, and IBM pay the engineers. Most Windows apps do run via Wine or Proton. And no, Linux isn't taking over the desktop, but it already owns 95% of servers, which is exactly why you're learning it. And that's Linux locked in. 3 distro families on one kernel, 3 package managers in your toolkit, System CUL and Journal CUL for services, and the file system hierarchy mapped out. You can SSH into a box now and actually find your way around. Next up, Lesson 30 tackles files and permissions across all 3 operating systems, Chmod, ACLs, ownership, and finally, understanding why access denied keeps haunting your tickets. See you there.